Hey, welcome back to Slick Willy Fly. So today we're going to make a redfish fly. I call this a redfish fly, but it's really good for any inshore species. Snook, trout, redfish, jacks, ladyfish, pretty much everything will eat it. So this fly is going to ride hook up, and to do that we're going to go ahead and put some dumbbell eyes on this fly, and that'll make it ride hook up. I'm using a little bit of olive thread, but you can use any color you like. And for this fly, I've been sitting here wondering if I should use red or yellow, but I think I've decided to go ahead and use black lead dumbbell eyes. And honestly, I know a lot of people like using large or medium. I like using small. I think that they sink plenty fast. I'm fishing in South Florida where, you know, like the Everglades, Chokoloskee, it's plenty shallow. I don't need a big lead, and this is easier to cast. So I'm going to go ahead and put figure eights in, as you see. And then once I am happy with the way this looks, I'm going to go under the eyes and over the hook. And what this does is it draws it tight. You've seen me do this in plenty of videos, and we get it nice and tight. And once I'm happy with that, I get my thread out of the way. Oh, there's a little thunder out there. Don't know if you can hear that. It's a rainy day, so it's a great day to tie flies. I'm going to just get a little spot. I put a little touch of zap on my thread, and I like to put zap on the thread so that I know it doesn't spin. And then once I put zap between the eyes, I like to come across and just put a couple more wraps in there. It pushes the zap into where I want it by doing that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the point of the hook where it starts to bend. About right there, it looks good. Actually, I'm going to take it a little farther just to make sure that we get it all the way to the back. Bring it back to about there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of Cactus Chenille 6mm olive. Don't need a lot. I'm going to make a little ball. By giving the thread this little spin right here, it'll loop the way I want it to loop instead of fighting me. So lock that in nice and tight. And now I'm going to wrap the chenille towards me, and I actually want to create a ball. So I'm really wrapping it on top of itself. And that's about enough right there. So capture that. And cut it off. Perfect. So now I'm going to take cream color craft fur. And I didn't prep it today because I'm only going to use one little clump of craft fur. This isn't going to take any time at all. So I'm going to get a little clump. Doesn't have to be very big. I would say about half the diameter of a pencil is plenty. And I'm going for very natural colors. This fly is going to be a lot of tans and browns and olives and that kind of coloring. Just very natural looking coloring in nature. I am going to remove all the little guard hairs, all the little underbrush, which you see here. Beautiful. Then the extremely long hairs, I go ahead and just pluck them out as well. You can, if you want, lay them back into the fold. So now the length of this fly, I want it to be about, I would say, 1.5 times the hook shank. So there's the hook shank. There's my hook shank, plus a half. So about where I have my finger is the tie-in point. So I'm going to lay this right on top of the little chenille I just put in. A couple of loose wraps. And it's important that these wraps are loose, because if you pull tight at this point, what happens is it'll draw all this craft fur around the hook. So you don't want that. So once I've got this where I want it, without pulling tight, I'm going to pull this tag up, and now I'm going to crank tight. Now I can put it right where I want it, and that didn't move. It stayed on top of the hook just the way I wanted it. So now I could twist this off, and when I twist it off, I can cut my tag end pretty clean. Just like that. Make sure that that's all tight. Alright, so I'm back. My son came home and had to pause the video there for a second. Alright, so the next step is I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of crystal flash, gold crystal flash, on this fly. I'm going to put on, I took the crystal flash and I folded it in half. 2 strands of crystal flash. So I've put it on mostly on my side right now. I'm going to take the remaining to the opposite side and lock it in. Make sure I like the placement, which I do. And I'm going to go ahead and open these loops. And that looks about what I want. Like it. So now I'm going to put on a couple of feathers, which I also pre-prepped, a little bit of grizzly feather. And I'm going to go ahead and put these pretty much on the side. And if they can be slightly longer than the craft fur, I prefer that. So a couple of wraps. Make sure that I like the placement, which I do. Lock it and pull it tight. Don't even need to trim the tag. Just lock the whole thing in. Now I'm going to do the exact same on the opposite side. Remember, a lot of times I make these a hair long, and then I pull them, I adjust them to the correct length once I've put a couple of wraps in, a couple of turns. So a couple of turns. Make sure I like where it's sitting. Wow, that came out really good actually. Really good. Don't have to do much adjusting there at all. And lock that one in. So I got a couple of feathers on there now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a little EP brush. Today's brush is a sparkle brush in copper color. So I'm going to go ahead and tie in the brush. Now I'm going to get my thread out of the way. Now you can use your rotating function if you have it. You don't need to. But the biggest part of this is, what I think is important, is that you palmer all these fibers to the back. So as I use the brush, I'm going to palmer everything to the back. Just like that. You don't need a lot. I would say maybe at the most 5 turns. I'm on probably 3 right now. You can probably get away with 3, 4. I happen to really like this stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and give it one last turn, just like that. Palmer everything. And now I'm going to get my thread and I'm going to lock it in. Now, I will say, I'm going to give you another tip here. Would not use your good scissors to remove this brush. I actually have something just for cutting wire. Just like that. So now, what I like to do now at this point is I like to palmer everything back and make sure that all my fibers are going to the back. So I actually go over it maybe about a millimeter, as you see there. Now what I'm gonna do is some people do this in the step previous, some people do it at this step. I do it both ways. I like it in both instances. It's hard to say which I like better. But what I have here is I have silly legs. This is called chrome pumpkin. And I'm just going to take one silly leg and I'm going to put it on the thread at about the halfway mark. I'm going to take it right on top and I'm going to go ahead and lock it in right on top. Just like that. Beautiful. That looks great. These little silly legs are going to give this a ton of action. That looks great. So now what I'm going to use for the remaining of the fly is I'm going to use this little chenille. It is, they call it Game Changer chenille. And the color is olive. You know, this is where you could put on, maybe I do it. Why not? You could put on a little bit of polar chenille. You could put on, I can use a little bit of white. I have some white here. You're only limited by your imagination. And white polar chenille, this stuff's great. Maybe I put on like 1 or 2 wraps at the most. I'm gonna lock this in. Get my thread out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and give this 1, 2 wraps. Just like that. Bring my thread back. Capture this chenille. And cut this off. Not a necessary step, but it just gives it a little bit more color, a little bit more, you know, flash, if you will. And it's just a little bit something more. You know, you could take a brush or a dubbing needle and just make sure that all this trap fibers have loosened up. Just like that. So now I am going to take my Game Changer cactus in olive. And I'm going to strip off just a little bit off the end, exposing the thread. I'm going to go ahead and tie in my thread. Bring it all the way back to where I want to start the rotation. Doesn't matter how messy this stuff is. It's chenille. It's gonna be messy. I'm gonna go ahead and use my rotary function, and I'm gonna start bringing it over. But I do want to palmer it as I go, best as I can. One more wrap should do it. Maybe just one more. Yeah, I like that. So now I'm going to bring my thread back behind the eyeballs. And just by wiggling it, capture the chenille right behind the eyeballs. Then I'm going to bring the chenille under the eyes, maybe a turn or two, bring my thread under the eyes, and I'm going to wiggle it through the chenille all the way to the front. And now I could cut this off. Remember, don't cut on the same side as your bobbin. I can get that out of the way. Now I am going to take a pair of scissors and trim all of this up. And I'll show you a trick for getting the fluff out of the eye of the hook, so that the eye of the hook is free of everything. But this basically is the fly. So we could put a whip finish in now. Could put a second whip finish in. Now you could cut off your thread. And now what I like to do is I like to trim on an angle, a little diagonal, a little bit of this chenille. Not all of it, because I want this fluff, but I'm going to give it like a haircut. And then I'm going to show you a trick on how I take away all this fibers away from the eye of the hook. Now remember, when you're thinking about this fly, this is how the fly is going to ride. This fly is going to ride hook up. So when you're trimming your fly, keep in mind that this hook is the top of the fly. And I'll tell you another little tip that I think everyone should have. I can't imagine tying these kind of flies and not having my trusty dust buster handy, because you could see the mess I'm making. I love this fly. This is such a cool little fly. It's durable, catches a lot of fish. You could put a weed guard on it if you like. There's really just the sky's the limit here. And now, my dust buster. I'm probably gonna trim this up a little more, but I'm gonna go ahead and get to my little trick I was gonna show you. So what I do is I take an older bodkin, and then I just heat it up, just like this. And then without burning myself, I come in here and I just get rid of all these extra fibers that I don't want. Just like that. Make this beautiful without risking lighting my whole fly on fire. Yes, I like it. And then the last thing I do is I take a fresh bodkin and I get a little bit of fly finish. You can use Zap-A-Gap, you can use whatever you want. I'm most likely going to trim this a little bit more, but I love it. I love the way it looks. This fly will definitely sink. We'll ride hook side up, and it looks buggy. You know, it looks kind of like, it looks crustacean, I guess is the right way to put it. And when you're in that inshore water, you know, that's a little murky water sometimes. I don't know, I think it could be they think it's a shrimp, could be they think it's a crab, I don't know. But the redfish love it, and I love anything the redfish love. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I don't know what we're gonna call it. You know, the problem that I have is that if you YouTube, I gotta cut that, I gotta trim that a little bit. If you YouTube, for instance, redfish candy or anything, surf candy, there's so many flies out there that have these kind of names. So I don't want to use these kind of names. I guess what I'm gonna call this for the purpose of the video, I'm gonna call this my inshore magic. Might trim this up a little more. But basically that's the fly. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you hit the like and subscribe. This is a great fly, easy to cast. We'll ride hook side up, and I promise you that this fly gets eaten. So thanks for watching. Again, any color combo you like, any hook size you like. That's a 3/0 saltwater hook right there. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next video.